Today, we are going to discuss creating a service order whereby we are going to bill the customer for the time and materials that were used on that service order. Okay, let's go out to the Service button and then click on Order Processing and look at a service order. When we click on Orders, it brings us to the last service order that we accessed in the system. And in this particular case, we had one that is currently open. If you didn't have any open service orders, it will bring you to a blank service order to begin working with. Okay, to generate a new service order, we are simply going to hit F3 and then press Enter. That generates a new service order number, and that is the first step in creating a service order. If you've watched the service order overview video, you'll know that there are basically 12 steps involved in processing a service order. We are going to go through most of these steps and also refer to some other videos whereby you can get more information about some specific steps along the way. Okay, so the first step we created is we created the service order. The next step is to enter in a short description of what the problem is. And we're going to say that the customer has a cracked exhaust pipe. Now, this description is a brief description that we simply enter in on the service order, and this is used by the service dispatcher to gain a quick overview of what the particular service order involves. Okay, so they know there's a cracked exhaust pipe that might require this service item that we're going to work with, this piece of equipment, to have the exhaust pipe replaced. So they were able to look at that quickly and say, all right, I know that this specific service technician I have has the skills to be able to do that, and they can allocate the appropriate person to that particular work order. Okay, so the next step after this is to enter in the customer number. Now, there are multiple scenarios which would determine how you would enter in the customer number. The first scenario is if the customer is an existing customer of ours. Did we sell this piece of equipment to the customer, and are they already in our system? We can look by clicking on the customer number field and clicking on the lookup button there. That'll bring us to our customer list, and here you'll notice we're going to select the Trizaka Construction Company. They happen to be the customer we're working with. So they do exist, so we're going to say OK to that. If the customer did not exist and they just happen to be a customer that walked into our service shop with a piece of equipment to work on, then we could just skip over the customer number field and just start entering their name, address, city, state, zip, and contact information here, and go to our Functions button and choose Create Customer to automatically create a customer in the system. For more information about how to do that, be sure to watch our video on how to create a customer from a service order. The third scenario is if this was work that we were doing on our internal equipment, maybe rental equipment that we're renting to customers, whether it's planned maintenance or whether it happens to be a piece of equipment that needs servicing or is broken. We can come in here and choose, instead of the customer of an outside customer, we can choose an internal rentals customer in this particular case. And we have one set up here as I'm pointing to. For our scenario, we're going to leave it as the Trizaka Construction Company. What we're going to do is we're going to hit Enter off of this field, and the system does a credit check for us. Shows that the customer has an overdue balance in this particular case, quite a hefty overdue balance as well, but we're going to let them slide for the purposes of this example. We'll say yes to this, we'll let us go through. We want to record the order. Okay, so it brought our customer information in on this service order, on this general tab. So it brought in their address, city, state, zip, contact information, etc. here. Now, the next step involved in entering a service order is to enter through the fields till we get to our service order type field. And in the service order type field, we'll click on the lookup arrow and select the type of service order that this is. We're going to say that this is shop service, okay? But you'll notice we have some other ones set up on this sample database. Emergency service, planned maintenance, road service, new equipment setup, etc. Now, the service order type is used for analyzing trends in the type of service that you perform. So you can review over your service order types later on to see the types of service that you've done, and then maybe look and see where most of your revenue comes from, etc. So we're going to enter in a shop service as this particular case because they brought the piece of equipment in to be worked on. You could optionally enter in a contract number if it applied to a particular contract that you have sold to the customer. Contracts are covered in our advanced training DVD, so we're going to skip over that field. The response date and response time has not been set yet. Those are two fields that will be automatically assigned by the system as soon as we enter some more information on this. And you'll notice that the status for this service order is set to pending. We have four choices: pending, in process, finished, and on hold. It's set to pending by default because we haven't started working on this yet. Once we start changing some repair status codes on when we start working on the piece of equipment, you'll notice that this status will change, and I'll come back and show you that in a bit. Okay, our responsibility center is Hartford, and that has come directly from the customer card. If we move over to the invoicing tab, you'll notice that it's defaulted in that the bill to customer is the same as the customer that we started working with, Trizaka Construction Company. You could optionally bill to a different customer if you wish. In this particular case, it's the same company. It also shows the salesperson code or sales team code that this applies to, any department codes, posting date, document date automatically defaulted in, etc. Okay, some of the fields we'll skip over. On the shipping tab, you can optionally specify a different ship to code if you're going to be delivering it to a different location for this customer, and you can set up ship to addresses on the customer card, and if they had one, you can click on the lookup arrow and pick from the list. Trizaka Construction Company happens to only have one address list. Okay, on the Details tab, a lot of this information will default in from a contract, but we will be looking at the starting date and time as well as the finishing date and time. We'll come back to those fields in a little bit. You'll notice as well here that it did enter in the order date and order time that we began entering this particular order. Finally, the Foreign Trade tab deals with currency codes, which is foreign currencies. If you're doing multiple currencies in your organization, you might specify a different currency code. We will skip over that for the purposes of this example. Okay, now the next step is to enter the service item information, service item number information that we're going to work with. So in the service item number field on the first line, we're going to click on the lookup arrow, and we are going to pick the piece of equipment that we'll work on. You'll notice that there are two assigned to this customer, number 43, Trizaka Construction Company. That means that we had sold two pieces of equipment to them, or at least serviced two pieces of equipment at one point or another, and we've captured the information from that, whether it's from the sale or just entering the information in. We're going to choose that it is serial number F058890, that is the problematic piece of equipment. So we'll go ahead and say OK to that. And you'll notice that it has brought in certain information. It brought in the item number, which is on the service item number card. The item number happens to be a inventory item that we keep in stock, and we happen to have sold this to this customer, and it has created it for us automatically, created the service item number automatically for us once we sold that piece of equipment, and that was done through the service item group code. This item group code was assigned to that inventory item, and it had the check mark for create service item. Be sure to watch the video on service item groups to see how that works in greater detail. The serial number, of course, got brought over. The description got brought over. The repair status code has been set to initial. If we click on the lookup arrow, you'll notice we have some other ones set here: in process, partially complete, etc. These will change as we start entering other information into the system, and I'll show you how that works in just a bit. If we scroll across a little bit here, you'll notice that it's defaulted in the fact that this particular piece of equipment is covered under warranty and that there's 100% warranty on parts and labor. We are going to actually override that fact because the example we're giving is that we're going to charge the customer for time and material. So our example is that the customer had an accident with a piece of equipment or crashed into a rock or hit a rock with it, and it actually cracked the exhaust pipe in that particular case. So it was their fault that it actually happened, so we're going to void that particular warranty as per the terms of the warranty. The fault code and resolution code have not been assigned yet. We are going to assign those from the service item worksheet in just a minute. The default response time has defaulted in from the service item card as well as 2 hours. So it shows that the response date is that same day of 11:30, and our response time has been set to 3:40:35, which came from the Details tab of 1:40:35 plus the 2 hours. So we are to respond by 3:40 to start working on this piece of equipment. And it also shows the number of previous services set to 0. We have not worked on this equipment yet. Okay, now, I gave the example, and I said that the customer stated they hit a rock with this Nissan Heavyweight F05 series piece of equipment. So because they hit the rock and cracked the exhaust pipe, it is actually, we can set a fault reason code to set it so that the warranty of 100% for parts and labor is not applied in this case. If we click on the lookup arrow, and if you've reviewed the video on fault reason codes, you'll notice that we have a couple set up here already for non-warranty and non-contract service. In this particular case, we're going to choose that it's non-warranty service, which will exclude the warranty discount because of that check mark. Once we say OK to that and enter off of that field, that now will exclude the 100% warranty for parts and labor. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to go down to and enter in the comments as far as what the fault is on this particular piece of equipment. We go down to our line button and we choose comments, and we're going to choose faults in this case. So entering in the fault comments is a long description essentially of what happened with this piece of equipment. So we're going to say that the customer states they hit a rock and the exhaust pipe cracked. They believe that it requires replacement. Okay, so this is a piece of information that we're entering in, and this could be the person who's taking the service order. And this fault comment is going to show up when we print our service order, which is actually going to be the next step in the service order process, is to print the work order and the receipt. So when we close this, our next step is to actually print the service order so that we can print 2 copies of this. Okay, we can do that by clicking on the print button, and in the options tab we can say number of copies set to 1. And then when we choose print, it'll print to a printer. We're going to choose preview so you can see on screen. But what happens is we'll print 2 copies. One to attach to the piece of equipment so that when the service technician actually grabs it, they'll see the fault comments that we just entered. Customer states they hit a rock, etc. And the second one is to give a copy to the customer as far as the service order receipt. Okay, so we give this a copy to the customer as their receipt that we have their equipment. Okay, once we have printed the work order and receipt, the next step is to actually dispatch the appropriate service technician to service the equipment. We do that through the service dispatching functionality in the system, and we are not going to cover that in this particular video. Be sure to watch the video on service dispatching to find out how to allocate the appropriate resource to work on this particular service work order. Okay, the next step is for the service technician to begin performing work on the service item. So they're going to go down to this service order, go to the line button, and choose Service Item Worksheet. This Service Item Worksheet will allow them to start entering in information as far as what they have found with this and started to work on it. The first step for them to do is to go in to Repair Status Code, change it from Initial to In Process. When we change it to In Process, I'm going to close out of this Service Item Worksheet for the time being, and you'll notice that back on the header of this, it shows that the status is in process, so that when the service dispatcher is looking at this particular service order from the dispatching screen, that it will now be updated and they can see that this work order is in process, or a customer service rep might note that this work order is in process, and then if the customer calls to find out a status, they at least know that it is being currently worked on. It has also updated the repair status code on the service item line to in process. Okay, so back to the service item worksheet. We are going to now start filling in some information as if we are the service technician working on this piece of equipment. We're going to look at this, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fill in the fault area code. We're going to click on the lookup arrow, and you'll notice here that there are some fault area codes assigned: battery, brake, bucket, etc. This happens to be the exhaust pipe is the area of the piece of equipment that has the problem. Be sure to watch our video on fault areas to get a good overview of what they are and how they work. We'll go ahead and select exhaust. And the symptom for this, if we click on our lookup arrow, you'll notice we have a bunch of symptoms already predefined in here. And what we're going to say is that this particular piece of equipment happens to be cracked. And that is symptom number 4, which is broke or cracked. So we'll say OK to that. And finally, the combination of the fault area code and symptom code will allow us to select a fault code to assign to this. If we click on the fault code, we can assign cracked, because it happens to be a cracked exhaust pipe. It's the combination of the two of those that have defined this as being cracked. Okay, so that is actually the fault code, and we are going to assume that it is after the service technician has worked on this, we're going to enter in a resolution code as well. So we're actually going through the process, working on the service item, and now we're entering in our time and materials and resolution comments. So our resolution for this is that the service technician has replaced the broken equipment or part. So we'll choose replaced, and now we have the ability to enter in resolution comments. So the service technician can enter this in. This will print on the service order as well. So I can click on that little pencil next to there, and it'll bring us to our resolution service comments, and we can say replaced exhaust pipe, and then I'm going to enter in the initials or the service technician's name who worked on it. So let's say I am Ryan Sullivan. So the resolution to fixing this piece of equipment was that we replaced the exhaust pipe. It's Ryan Sullivan. And I close out of that. Now it's indicated that we have comments with the little pencil with the paper there. And now what we need to do is enter in the actual time and materials that we spent on this. So we enter in the item number, and when we click on our lookup, we are going to choose that we entered in. I'm going to find the exhaust pipe that we had entered, and we'll press OK. Now we'll enter in our exhaust pipe as being the piece of equipment. We'll go across and we'll enter in a quantity of 1, and you'll notice that it has brought in the symptom code, fault code, resolution code, and the unit price that got brought down. And you'll notice now we don't have any line discount percentage because this is non-warranty work. So as I scroll across, that information is brought in. And we go down to the next line, and what we're going to do is enter in that it is Ryan Sullivan's time. So we go down to resource, and we will pick Ryan Sullivan from the list and enter across. And what we're going to do is, actually we're going to show a column called the work type code so that we can enter in the type of work that he performed. In the work type code field, you can optionally make this a mandatory field to enter in. And you'll notice here we've set some defaults up for overtime, regular, travel time, and warranty work. In this particular case, we're going to choose regular. Excuse me. We're going to make sure the unit of measure code is set to hour. And we're going to put in a quantity of 1.5 hours that it took him to replace that. So now as we scroll across, you'll notice that the unit price is $60. And it shows here the line amount of $90. And the warranty has been excluded in this particular case. So we have now entered in the time and materials on this service item worksheet. And if we look at the service item worksheet, we've entered in the information up here. We've entered in the fault area, fault information. We now need to change the repair status code to finished because we've already replaced it. We know that we're done. And what we do is we go into this repair status field, click on the lookup, choose finished, and say OK. And what that does is that updates our service order back. And when we look back at the service order, you'll see how that works. Okay, on the customer tab, I did not review this yet, but on the customer tab, it shows the customer number, the shipping information, and then as well as the details. And now you'll notice that the response date and time is filled in, okay, as of 3:40. Shows the starting date, starting time, shows the finishing date and finishing time. You'll notice we just finished this piece of equipment, or working on this piece of equipment, so it entered that information for us. So now, when we close out of this service item worksheet, this will automatically update the service order. The status has now been changed to finished. The repair status code is finished. And we have basically finished doing what we need to do on this particular service order.